Welcome to Weight Loss and Wellness for Real, the podcast where people like you get the practical solutions and support you need to permanently lose the physical and mental weight so you can feel better and live the life you want in the body and mind you want. If you're looking to overcome your stress eating, overeating, binging behaviors, and move to a place of freedom with food and your body, you're in the right place. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here and listening. I appreciate all of you who tune in every week to take a listen. And thanks to those of you who are patrons to the podcast. This is what helps me keep a new episode up and running each week. And if you find something valuable in these episodes, in this podcast, you can become a patron of the podcast for as little as 99 cents a month. Just go to the episode description from wherever you are listening and click the very bottom link that says support this podcast, and it will tell you what to do from there. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the relationship between deprivation and over-desire. This relationship is most often what starts the cycle of overeating, of binging, of yo-yo dieting, of regaining weight you've already lost. And so it's really important to understand how this relationship between deprivation and desire, deprivation and over-desire, and how to manage it so that you can stay out of that overeating, that binging, that yo-yo dieting cycle, and keep on the path to, what I'm going to say normal, in quotation marks, normal eating patterns, healthy eating patterns, sustained weight loss, if that's your goal, and ultimately freedom from food and body thoughts and the ability to move on to other things in your life. Hi, everyone. Guess what? I have a lovely discount code just for you, my listeners. The code is 10 off. That's 10OFF, and it will get you 10% off any one of my online courses, which now include Mastering Mindful Eating, Overcome Binge Eating, Overeating, and Emotional Eating for Good. And I also have a course on When You Want to Stop the Weight Loss Medication, a comprehensive guide to weight maintenance and mastery. So if you've maybe lost some weight using a medication and you're now wanting to go off the medication but keep the weight off, this is the course for you. And any course you buy, you keep the course for a minimum of 3 years, maybe longer. It just depends on how many are purchased. All courses are self-paced, and I promise you they are practical, meaning they don't just tell you what you need to do. You actually engage in the skills and strategies needed to make actual lasting behavior change. You learn how to do the what. Okay, all courses have multiple modules with multiple lessons. All include lots of examples, tips, and tricks to make things simple and clear. And you also get lots of downloadable resources, including the daily planning template that I use with my own clients, the exact protocol to use after a binge or an overeat has occurred to minimize its damage on your body and your mind. There are protein cheat sheets, research-based journaling prompts, and the literal how-to checklists on the skill you are learning about. And with the weight maintenance course, you also have a movement module that will help you figure out how to make a movement plan that fits your particular lifestyle and level of fitness. And you also have a natural appetite regulation module. So whether if you have never tried an online course to change behavior, or if you have, I just highly would recommend that you try one of these. I've put my heart and soul into both of them. They are all research-based, and now you can get 10% off. So again, that code is 10OFF. If you're ready to make changes that last, you can go to my website, heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And from the main menu, click courses, and it will get you to where you want to go. Or you can click on the links in the episode description below the show. And again, as soon as you're there, when you're ready for checkout, just enter the code 10OFF, 10 off. And just a reminder, I also have an ebook cookbook that is now available. It's called Protein Forward Easy Recipes. It includes all high protein recipes, including breakfast and sweet treats full of protein. and lunches and dinner. Okay, so again, head to my website. It's probably the easiest thing to do, heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And from there, go to courses or the cookbook. And again, use code 10OFF at checkout. When we take a look at situations where we feel out of control with eating, with food, many of us think that these instances or these experiences are due to emotional issues. And this can be true. Emotional eating is definitely a thing. But there are also times that this out of control eating is due to deprivation. Or another way to put it is that overeating is deprivation driven. So most of the time with overeating, it is coming from an original place of deprivation. Many of us do not think we're really in a state of deprivation, but for any of us with a history of restricting foods, so anyone out there who has dieted or is currently on a diet, that means you are restricting foods, or often it can be those of us who are trying to eat healthy, in quotation marks, with a focus on low calorie foods or cutting out a particular food group or a macro group. Any keto followers or low carb folks out there? Now, there are times some people need to cut out a particular food due to allergies or intolerances, and that's a different story. But I'm talking about when someone goes on a diet and restricts certain foods or food groups. This is restrained or restricted eating. Overeating or binging due to deprivation can occur due to the under-eating the previous day or under-eating for a day last week. So what I mean by that is the effects of deprivation eating can sort of compound, if you will, until all of the sudden, after like a week or 2 weeks of being perfect on your diet, you all of a sudden find yourself binging and or overeating. I went through so many times like this, and I was always dumbfounded by it. I was just like, I just ate perfect for 2 weeks, and now I can't stop binging. What the heck? And maybe you've experienced this too. This is the classic relationship between deprivation and desire, deprivation and over desire. The more we restrict, the more we deprive ourselves, the more desire builds and builds until eventually there is no stopping the urges. There's no stopping the overeating. And if you're binge eating, there's no stopping the binge. And deprivation-driven eating can come from physical or psychological restriction. And I talk about this fairly often, and so you've probably heard this concept before, but you can basically physically restrict food or certain foods. And then, you're in a state of not enough fuel for your body. You can also do this if you are an over-exerciser, so not giving yourself enough fuel for all your activities, for your over-exercising. But you can also restrict due to psychological reasons. And this may happen if you come from a home where food was highly controlled, so you weren't allowed to eat certain things. And it can also come from simply how you are thinking about food. So you may be eating all the things, but you are still telling yourself you shouldn't. So you may continue to be eating all the things, but because you are telling yourself you shouldn't and you're feeling guilt or shame for what you eat, your brain and body actually still feel deprived. So you set yourself up on a psychological level to be deprived, even when you're eating all the things. So now it's a double whammy because you're eating all the things, still feeling deprived, and so you eat even more. It can also come from simply not having the freedom to eat the way you want, or being criticized or judged for eating what you want. Also, just a little side note here for you parents out there. Research has found that when parents try to control their children's consumption of junk or unhealthy foods, or controlling how much food may be consumed, this really does end up backfiring. These sort of restrictive feeding practices only increase children's preferences for forbidden foods, kind of what we're talking about, creates over desire for these foods. It creates excitement around these foods and often a behavior of hiding foods and secret eating. And also, girls are more likely to eat when they're not hungry if their mothers restrict their food intake. Now, this doesn't mean it's a free-for-all with your kids. I always suggest not keeping all kinds of junk foods in the house and focusing on whole, nourishing foods for kids. It's more about how you talk about foods to your kids. if there's a birthday party and you won't allow your kid to have a piece of cake, or you say things like, that's a bad food. This is how this pattern gets started in our kids. Instead of focusing on using language with kids and food, or what you want to do is focus on using language with kids and food that is neutral and educates them on different foods and encouraging them to pay attention to how they feel after eating a certain food. So more about education, more about what you keep in the house, what you don't keep in the house, more neutral talk around food and educating them. Okay, so the desire, the overeating or the binging coming from deprivation is, as I said before, a little different from emotional eating in that the drive to overeat or binge really stems from past physical or psychological deprivation around food. This type of eating is not triggered by emotions. Emotions definitely can drive the urge to overeat, but until you deal with the deprivation eating, we really can't know if we're being pushed to eat due to our emotions or due to deprivation. Okay, so are you saying things to yourself like, I need to eat healthy, or I should not eat that, or, well, I won't eat it again, or I'll eat it now and then cut back on calories or exercise more? And if you are overeating or binging, that is deprivation-driven eating. And it's so important to know this, because if you get tuned in to that you are doing this, there is a simple solve for this problem that will reduce the overeating and the binging, which leads to weight loss if that's your goal, and helps you to lose that weight and keep it off for good. Okay, so what's the solve? What's the secret? And that is giving yourself permission to eat. To stop the deprivation-driven eating and the creation of over-desire for food, you have to give yourself permission to eat. There is really no getting around it. And I know a lot of you out there right now are kind of freaking out. And I know that because that was me when I learned about this, when I was going through recovery. And I was just like, there is no way I'm giving myself permission to eat anything. I will be so out of control. I'm going to gain so much weight. There's no way I can do that. So I totally get it if you're freaking out and if you're scared and if you don't believe that giving yourself permission will actually bring less overeating, less binging, and weight loss. But hang on and keep listening, because this really does work. Giving yourself permission is not about free falling into a food free-for-all. It is about having the assurance that you can have the food you want when you want it, so that you no longer feel compulsive or out of control around your forbidden foods. This is food freedom. Okay, so how do you create a state of permission while not overeating or not, nosediving into the free-for-all I was talking about? This is about a state of mind that you create for yourself. It's about creating neutrality in your emotions. You talk to yourself in a compassionate way, and you tell yourself, we are done with the deprivation. We can have what we want when we want it, because we are an adult and we get to make decisions for ourselves. Telling yourself you can have what you want when you want it creates a much less emotional response. It creates much less of that feeling of deprivation. Psychologically, you bring yourself to a state of calm, of neutrality. And when the body and brain is in this state of calm and neutrality, it does not feel restricted or deprived. And therefore, the drive to eat out of over desire for food starts to dissipate. And over time, the overeating, the binging episodes start to decline and the weight begins to come off. Again, if that's your goal. So here's a clear example of how this works in my head, as well as my clients who practice this. I tell myself this sentence often: I can have whatever I want whenever I want, because I'm an adult who can make decisions about the food I eat. Sometimes I may choose to have the thing. Sometimes I might not choose to have the thing, but I am in control of this decision. This sentence keeps my brain and body from feeling restricted and deprived, and also keeps me making decisions in the moment about food that serve me and my body best. This sentence gives me pause. It gives me space to make the best decision for me. So in that pause, I may think things like, I know that eating 5 cookies is going to make me feel like crap and I want more energy today, so I'm going to pass. Or, I may have 1 cookie. Or it may be a homemade cookie my mom made and I really want one, so I have it. The difference is with both situations, I am not ever out of control with the food. And so the overeats and the binging episodes slow down. There's more neutrality around food, and that's where food freedom exists. Okay, one last thing, a few practical tips. If you struggle with this, I would highly, highly encourage you to start to practice eating regularly throughout the day. If you are intermittent fasting, or if you're waiting to eat until lunchtime, or you're only eating 1 to 2 meals a day, starting to eat every 3 to 4 hours will often stop the overeating, binging behaviors. Eating regularly teaches the brain and body that you are safe. Food is safety to your body. So if you are restricting, the body and brain go into fight or flight. That amygdala is turned on and it's going to trigger that overeating and that binging. So often just eating every 3 to 4 hours will slow that down. So by eating breakfast and then eating every 3 to 4 hours after that. And I'm not against fasting. I'm not against intermittent fasting. But for those of you who have deprivation-driven eating, overeating and binging going on, I am telling you that fasting, waiting to eat, it does not work. You need to eat breakfast and you need to eat every 3 to 4 hours after that. Okay, second practical tip is to eat enough protein for you, for your needs, for your individual needs at every meal. If you can get your protein amount right, you will also find your appetite will often regulate on its own. And finally, if you can lessen the amounts of processed foods you take in, this will often also help to regulate the appetite and lessen the overeating and the binging. Okay, I hope you learned the importance of the relationship between deprivation and over desire, and therefore overeating and binging. The more we restrict and deprive, the more we over desire food, leading to overeating and binging behaviors. Remember that how you think in regards to giving yourself permission around food is the most important aspect of coming to a relationship that is normal and neutral with food. And beyond that, try a few of those practical behavioral strategies that I listed right at the end, like eating breakfast and then eating every 3 to 4 hours during the day. Get curious and pay attention to how these interventions start to work for you. Thank you so much for listening, for being here. I appreciate all of you, and we will talk soon. Just a reminder that this podcast represents my own opinions. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult your doctor or healthcare professional for any individual medical questions you may have. Did you know you can find a lot more help from me on my website? Go to heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen, and get in touch with questions on all things I offer, like online courses for overeating, weight loss, goal attainment, and also my coaching and counseling services.